Carson Price, sorry, a little late there. Wednesday, December 11th, 2024.
You got there.
Coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Herbert Lee. In this show, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sakaris alongside Blake Price. Just introduced generically today.
Oh.
Four-time Juno Award winner. I forgot to dig up a nugget on you. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, Hit and Switches, conducting things. Big show coming up. And, some days I just say that. Today I really mean it.
It's a huge show today.
Lots of texture. Lots of layers.
Well, the Canucks gave us a lot to discuss.
Oh, did they ever?
And we actually ended up sometimes
So did the coach.
And we fell into the best two guests to look at the many facets of the Canucks issues.
We really did.
On ice and off ice.
So I'm very much looking forward to this show. It's going to be longer than your normal show. I'm already looking at the math here of how long we went with Frank Corrado and Laurence Gilman.
We'll try to get out of the way a little bit early.
Plus, plenty going on in the world of sports.
Yeah,
too.
there is.
Yeah. In fact, some things we'll
the
have
off
to get to
seasons
tomorrow.
The off seasons are sizzling
Yes,
in the
they
other
are.
big
Yes,
sports
they are.
we cover.
Yeah, baseball, soccer, sizzling.
Even football started to pick up a little.
Mm-hmm. Well, CFL.
Yeah.
We're still in season down south.
Yeah.
Surrey Mitsubishi poll question: is Rick Tocchet's coaching holding this team back? You want spicy? Huh? You want a hot tamale? You can vote yes or no at Carson Price X and YouTube channels. Blake Price walked in here this morning spitting fire on this head coach. So I'm going to give you the floor, partner, to answer me the poll and then explain where your emotions were at, because you were spicy on Twitter last night and you were still fired up this morning.
Well, I cannot believe they got a point out of that game in the end. And there's a couple of reasons, goaltending and...
Can we agree it's success then? Like, given how poorly you played, you got a point out of it.
If I'm the coach, though, I use that. You got a point. They showed a little gumption at the end. I'm using that moment rather than when they're actually down and on the mat to rip them a new one. And he didn't go down that road. In fact, he almost played down how poorly they played in that game, which to me was an ass cover on some key personnel moves that he made prior to the game. And it may seem like this is a big limb to go out on over Eric freaking Brannström, a guy that was available for free.
A guy who the Canucks themselves put on waivers.
But it's the trickle down, and it's in combination with others. Derek Forbort is ready to go. He's out of the non-contact. He's been practicing with the team. This is a guy who's an everyday player with the Boston Bruins last year. He's a National Hockey League defenseman. Now, not a Norris Trophy winner. Never will be. But he's a National Hockey League defenseman.
He's a number 6, but okay.
Yeah. But
he's a fringe NHLer or fringe every night NHLer.
I'll allow you fringe every night.
That?
I'll allow fringe every night.
All right.
But he is that. Vincent Desharnais to me is not that.
Wow.
Mark Friedman is not that.
That we have full agreement on.
And to me, Eric Brannström is at least that.
Oh, no argument here, partner.
So to me, you had two defensemen better than your 5-6 guys last night that you willingly put in the press box. And on a team that's already thin on D, that makes that a cardinal error for last night's game.
Coaching malpractice.
Yes.
How did you vote on the poll?
Because this is the first time that Tocchet has really ticked me off, and it goes right from those performances to his post-game performance, which we'll get to. I'm still saying no. But
okay. I'm surprised. I thought Because when we were crafting the poll question today, it sounded to me very much like you were picking this spot to go at Tocchet and his system, which we'll get to.
Hey, if it's 3 strikes and you're out, this is the first fastball he's watched go down the middle. So he's still got some leeway here.
Very benevolent of you, sir.
But I will say this, that as I got spicier and spicier watching the defensive coverage last night and watching the lack of outlet passes and build-up, the reactions I was getting from the fans, though, Matt.
Oh, boy, the fans. Oh.
Like, this is overstated. I'm not agreeing with these people. But Fire Tocchet was tweeted at me several times.
Whoa. How soon we forget Canucks Twitter. So you remember where this fucking franchise was before Rick Tocchet? Dear God.
Well, it's funny you bring that up then, because that's where I'll leave this particular conversation at the very least, is this season feels like the first season of a Rick Tocchet kind of coach taking over from a team that has lost a lot. This seems like this season they are coaching like a team that they're going to do whatever it takes to get into the playoffs. That's the way this season feels to me, and I would have thought at this point in the arc that this team would have been past we're going to do whatever it takes to win games, we're going to do whatever it takes to get into the playoffs. I thought we were past that point in the evolution of this team.
Well, but Blake, in fairness, the Vezina caliber goaltender played his first game of the season, had missed the first 26. You're missing your number one centerman for now a 9th consecutive game, and you're missing your top pair right side defenseman, who is truly your only quality top 4 defenseman outside of Quinn Hughes.
I would say half the team, half the league, Matt, would say they have injury issues.
Okay, but Blake, missing personnel like that is going to affect the way you play.
The goaltending, I'm not buying. The goaltending, I don't know that Thatcher Demko's goaltending is any better than what Kevin
take
Lankinen.
On the other two.
Yeah, and
what, you want them to play up and down without Miller and Hronek? Like,
no.
Look who's dressing.
Matt, both Miller and Hronek have a reasonable sample size of games played this season.
Fair enough.
And when they were in the lineup, did you see something different? Because I didn't.
I voted no as well. Not yet, anyways. In part because of who's missing. In part because Rick Tocchet oversaw one of the great transformations in Vancouver Canuck history. And with full deference to Alain Vigneault and the late Pat Quinn in their Jack Adams seasons, last year was as good a job as any Vancouver Canucks head coach has ever done. Does he have the Midas touch again this year? No, not so much. We've talked about it. I think there's been some tactical mistakes, some lineup mistakes, some goaltending choice mistakes. But for me, it's a baby in bathwater situation. He has established a club identity. He has established a dependable, predictable, and responsible way of playing. They are one of, if not the best, defensive hockey club in the National Hockey League, and I don't mean they have a great goaltender who stops a lot of pucks. I mean they play tremendous defensive, connected, aligned hockey as a 5-man defensive unit in front of that goaltender, and it has underpinned their success. It baselines them. Now, if we get to the Stanley Cup playoffs and the goals dry up because of the system, then I will be the first in line with you to skewer Rick Tocchet. And frankly, last year there were a few things that we quibbled with in the playoffs. He was slow to adapt, slow to change. I think that's due criticism. I'll buy his media performance last night was somewhat of an ass covering for what to me was just an illogical scratching of Erik Brannström. Okay, he hadn't played his best hockey of late, but it seemed like he was waiting on the first opportunity where he could sort of kind of get away with scratching Brannström. Picked last night, poor spot. Does he deserve to be crucified for? Sure enough on that one. I'll help hammer the nails. That was a poor choice. I think what last night proved is that, especially without Hronek, Erik Brannström has to be an every night defenseman for the Vancouver Canucks.
I just don't want to hear that Rick Tocchet won the Jack Adams Award so that he gets a 9-year leash.
He doesn't get a 9-year leash, Blake.
But
he maybe gets a third of the next season leash when he's missing who he's missing.
There is one former Jack Adams Award winner that is still with the team.
No, I know. They get fired a lot.
They get fired
a lot.
It's Rod Brind'Amour from 2021.
Yeah.
He's the only coach of the year in the league that is still with the team that he coached.
And look, Blake, I will even go so far as to say that I am not wholly convinced that you can win a Stanley Cup playing this way. Counter-attacking defensive systems typically only get you so far. They can get you to or near the championship level, but they're not usually the ones that prevail. And that's because at the end of the day, typically talent wins out over systems. There are examples in NHL history. If you want to look at some of those New Jersey Devil teams and the way they trapped and played defensive hockey, now granted with one of the all-time goaltenders in Marty Brodeur, but even more recently the St. Louis Blues, who did not have an all-time goaltender, had a very hot Jordan Binnington and 4 solid lines, 3 solid defense pairs who, much like this Canucks team, played sensational hockey together and were able to ride that to a Stanley Cup. But usually it's teams that have offensive firepower. You may even put Florida in the mix of teams that get over the top. But more often than not, it's talent. More often than not, it's teams that are able to produce a consistent offensive threat and convert enough of their chances. That very much is lacking here with the Vancouver Canucks right now.
Looking at last year, the high danger chances for percentage of.
Where right now they are 29th in the National Hockey League in this category.
Last year, the best team in that regard was the Edmonton Oilers. 59% high danger chances throughout the season versus the opponent's share.
So on average, 2 more than their opponent per game.
Florida Panthers were 6th.
You know, that actually surprises me that Florida was that high.
Do you know who was 3rd or 4th, pardon me?
Vancouver.
The Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
Do you know who is?
Well, that's why. So no, but that explains 109 points.
Yeah. That's last year.
They don't have the horses this year. This defense does not transport the puck well enough. Guys are incapable of skating it out of the zone and through the neutral and into the offensive zone, and they don't have a lot of guys who can make that long, accurate pass either. There's just no there. It's square peg, round hole. So for me, he is coaching them based on what he's got. And if you want to argue that he was involved, pushed for, stumped for the likes of Forbert and Desharnais, and that he has to bear some responsibility, that's fair. That is absolutely fair. But you know who's more responsible? Patrick Allvin. You're the boss. You're the general manager. Coaches make suggestions. You make decisions. So, to me, it was incumbent on Patrick Allvin in the summer to say, Rick, as much as I like the notion of building a forest around Quinn Hughes, and as much as I recognize that the big defensemen were very helpful, and that's in that playoff series against Edmonton, gobbling up all the space. Coach, we need to transport the puck. We need to move the puck. We need to play faster. We need to generate more scoring chances at flight. And these guys aren't going to help do that.
Talk about Surrey
If Allvin showed deference to his Jack Adams Stanley Cup, Jack Adams winning coach, if not a Stanley Cup winning coach, sure, okay. But now it's incumbent on Allvin to play the heavy. Now it is incumbent on Allvin to go down to the coach's office with Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote and say, gentlemen, we're bringing in at least one, if not 2 defensemen by the trade deadline who aren't your prototype defensemen. They will probably be smaller. They will probably be better skaters than they are brute strength. They will be more comfortable with the puck on their stick, making that stretch pass, skating it out of the zone. And guess what? Yeah, there will probably be a few more turnovers because of that. And we may not be as stout along the boards and in the net front area of our own zone. We have to make that trade-off if we're going to get.
But those Redwoods aren't going anywhere. So in the playoffs, if he wants to go to the Redwoods,
yeah, fair.
They'll be there.
Exactly.
Canucks are on the ice at practice right now. There's news there. Do you have to talk about Surrey Mitsubishi? I think you should.
Okay.
Have you already done this?
It's lease month at Surrey Mitsubishi. Leasing a car, better option, lower monthly payment, minimal maintenance costs, convenience of staying under warranty. You get to drive a new ride every few years. Plus, you avoid the depreciation and the long-term commitment of ownership. The PHEV 2024, $182. That's the Outlander. If you want the gas Outlander, also 2024, $105 a week. The Eclipse Cross, just $100 a week. And the RVR, only $87 a week. Don't miss out on the $5,000 government rebate on the Outlander PHEV while it lasts. See dealer for details and terms. All leases always see Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey, or online at surreymitsubishi.ca.
So big news here is the JT Miller return is on hold for now. He's at practice, but skating as an extra, and it does not appear he's been media assembled have been told he will not speak today. He's not quite ready to go down that road, so it appears that is going to be again slow rolled and done sort of when he feels like he can do it. Additionally, there's no Tyler Myers at practice today. So as a result, the Canuck pairings at practice, read into this what you will for tomorrow night. After all we just discussed, the pairings are this: Hughes with Soucy and Juleson rotating in, Forbort and Friedman, Brannström and Desharnais. Matt, I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to suggest that it's going to be Forbort and Friedman tomorrow, and I don't think Eric Brannström's playing tomorrow night. That would be my guess looking at that.
That would just be foolish. What more do you need to see? I mean, that almost makes me wonder that there's something going on with Brannström from a disciplinary point of view.
It almost feels like that.
I don't know why you.
It almost feels
I don't
like
know
that.
why you would.
I mean, we'll see.
yourself
That's just
with
me
that.
reading those tea leaves.
So he wants to play Soucy on the right side with Hughes. Is this the guy who never plays, or very rarely? Last night being
generally, you just have a placeholder there, right? Like
what the fuck? Why wouldn't it be Hughes, Juleson, Soucy? Like, if you're really like Friedman.
And you know what, folks? I love that Friedman blocked the shot with his face last night. He's a tough SOB.
He sure is.
That doesn't make him a great defenseman.
Good organizational soldier.
But that doesn't make him an every night defenseman.
They put him in very difficult spots in terms of he goes long periods of time without playing. A coach has even talked about this with some of the young players. That's one of the difficult things you got to adapt to in the NHL. Okay. Whew. Let's get to our... we've just done a top story, but we'll get to another one.
Yeah, exactly.
4-3 overtime loss to St. Louis in Demko's return game, and for the first time in his Vancouver Canucks tenure, it's getting hot under the coach's collar. It's a smart hockey market, and Rick knows that.
Yeah.
And that's in part why I think it's in his nature to begin with, but I also find that sometimes he basks in that in his public comments. He knows he's talking to hockey people. You know, this isn't about educating new fans in the Sun Belt. A couple of tweets from fans that caught my attention yesterday, and two accounts I recognize. Chester. Rick Tocchet's systems obviously have a very high floor for winning in the NHL, but does he have enough ceiling to win a cup? I think that's the real question. Canucks are 31st in expected goals for per 60 in the NHL right now. Miller playing good doesn't move them more than a couple spots. Fair? 29th in high danger chances. 29th in shots, 25th in shot attempts, 25th in slot shots. And they're not doing more off the rush this year, albeit, again, with the very important context of when Miller and Hronek are not in the lineup. This is not a group that is really designed
when they
to
were
play
here,
with tempo.
We were having these same chats.
Fair, but it's also not a group, personnel-wise, that is designed to play with a ton of tempo. You know, these aren't the Flying Frenchmen of the Montreal Canadiens.
No, we talked about the improved depth on the wing. There was that moment where there were 7 guys tied for the team lead with 6-7 goals.
You need defensemen to get them to puck,
right?
To play with pace.
Well, but they were getting them to puck for a brief moment.
Briefly, yeah. And then this one from Jez. Canucks had one puck-moving defenseman tonight, and it showed. Scratching Brannström wasn't justified. Really feels like Tocchet is overcoaching the wrong guys. Yep, could be guilty of that too.
The meat and potatoes coaches can be guilty of this. And as progressive as he is on the meat and potatoes scale, he's the progressive end of things, I think, Rick Tocchet. But
he is. When
adversity strikes, as it has with injury here, they're going to default.
Mm-hmm. They're going to run home to mama, run home to the comfort zone.
And my goodness, can somebody please carry the puck over the blue line? Not named Quinn Hughes.
Yeah, a controlled zone entry from a defenseman not named Quinn Hughes. My fortune for a controlled zone entry from a defenseman not named Quinn Hughes.
Do you have the tweet from last night from Dmitry Filipovich?
I do not.
I'm doing this ad hoc, so I apologize for not showing here, folks. The Canucks with Hughes on the ice.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Just under 30 minutes. 49 shot attempts, 21 shots on goal, 6 high danger chances, 3 goals. That's just last night, folks. No, those aren't averages.
Which, when you read that, you think of the other half of the game and how little was going on.
So here's the other half.
He filled up the stat sheet himself in one half of the game.
So attempts, shots, high danger chances, goals. 49, 21, 6-3. Mm-hmm. When he wasn't on the ice, the other half of the game, 9 shot attempts.
Oh, my God.
4 shots on goal, 2 high danger chances, and 0 goals.
Yeah.
49-9.
That's them.
21-4.
That's them.
6-2, 3-0. Those are the differences.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know Quinn Hughes is amazing. But that is scary in both directions. How amazing he is and how not amazing everyone else is.
Yep.
Whew.
Okay. So now let's get to Coach's comments post-game, which really got in Blake's craw. So I'll just preface it. Okay, well, listen to the clip about Tocchet pushing back on Farhan Lalji about too much of a focus on Elias Pettersson. Let's take a listen. We'll come back.
What can you say about Petey? I mean, you've been asked, but with JT Miller due back soon, what can you say about the way Petey has elevated his game in JT's absence?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you expect him to do, right? He's doing a good job producing. I don't know what else to say. You guys are obsessed with Petey, yeah? It's Petey every game. Sorry.
You get paid a lot. You're always going to be part of the story.
But every game, I gotta. You guys are good at it. Like, you analyze the game. Why do I have to? I don't have. When I ask questions at TNT, I never always. Hey, this player. That's just.
We'll let you ask us the next time.
It just gets. I love you guys, but it gets old. Like every time, Petey. Because you guys. I know you want to say the wrong thing. That's why. I'm not falling for that trap anymore. I got fallen. But I'm joking. That is a legitimate question. He's producing. I'm screwing around with you. Like, he's been producing that JT's been out. Hopefully with JT coming back, those guys will both produce like they did last year for us. So, yeah, 1-2 punch.
That's the answer. That's the answer that just should have come out of his mouth at the first place.
Well, he got to it.
After he realized,
you're amused,
shit.
You're annoyed by it. I'm amused. And I think I have I would like to provide some context in defense of the coach.
Sure.
the way this show is going, I'm the best defenseman Rick Tocchet has outside of Quinn Hughes.
It's
And
true.
you know what? That might actually be the case.
You are vintage Chris Pronger for
holy
Rick Tocchet
shit,
right
I'm
now.
gone baby dragon here with Rick Tocchet. Johnny in the pizzeria is going to phone up and blast me a new one for the way I'm defending this coach. So first of all, he goes about it the wrong way. Because Elias Pettersson scores a goal and sets up the game-tying goal, which gets you a point. So, yeah, Coach, when that happens, all in the third period, we're going to ask about Pettersson.
And there is no chance Farhan was trying to catch him saying something.
Well, okay.
He was asking him to wax eloquent about the fine play.
So here's the first thing I'll say. How many times have we heard him get defensive in his nearly 2 years on the job?
Yeah, not many.
Almost never.
Yeah.
Right? Guess what? A law of averages approach here. Eventually, you're going to get an ordinary coach. Number two, he, maybe with the exception of Wally Buono, I have never covered a coach who is so willing to engage in all facets of the conversation about his organization, his player group. And I think much like Wally, he understands, and perhaps it has to do with some of his time in the media, which he referenced there on TNT, that he understands the NHL is an enterprise for a commercial audience, first and foremost. A lot of coaches, we had one here for a season, would rather not deal with anything other than the 23 players in his charge and whoever happens to be the opposition and officiating that night.
And the 60 to 65 minutes only.
Yeah. Well, guess what? That's not what this is about. The NHL exists for the purpose of a commercial audience to come and enjoy hockey. Yeah. It does not exist for the purpose of coaches and players getting to kill 7-8 hours a day and not get real jobs. Rick completely understands that. And then thirdly, I think he sometimes demurs in talking about Pettersson because I think he knows that Pettersson doesn't like conversation around him. And when he says, you're trying to get me to say the wrong thing, that's because he has in the past with Elias Pettersson. Not that the media has baited him into that. No. That was Rick on his own volition. His own mouth got him into trouble on Pettersson with he's got tendinitis. So I think he's a little gun-shy on Pettersson questions. And I think he's got purpose to be gun-shy on Pettersson questions. He just can't help himself talking. That has gotten him into trouble on the Pettersson side in the past.
Also, it should be noted for context.
Is that fair?
Yeah, but I don't think it gives a good reason for why he should act like he did last night. I think he caught himself.
Nobody was harmed. No bones were broken.
No,
honestly, when you work in media and asking questions of these guys, you can't have a fragile ego. They're going to lash back from time to time. You get the final word.
No one is going to be suing over this. No one is going to be thinking about this down the road. But hours after it's happened, we're going to talk about it. And he's very defensive. He says wildly crazy things like when he was in the media, he never asked about a specific player. Bullshit. It's
honestly,
and he just
protests too much.
And he also just talked about Petey unprovoked as part of two other answers.
Honestly.
And now all of a sudden Petey's name is verboten? It's distraction. It's covering.
Are you bruised, bro?
No, I'm not. I wasn't even there.
You gonna recover? Gonna heal up?
I wasn't even there.
You're Farhan's best defenseman here.
I just think it's
secondhand outrage.
I think it's
outrage
a coach
by proxy.
I think it's a coach that knows he was caught making bad decisions, and he didn't want to answer about it.
I think that's probably fair. I think, although now when I see Brannström with Hronek today, I wonder if that is in fact a coach who understands the mistake he made last night.
Now
he's just too stubborn.
Now he's got me
or he's
cheering.
Just going to throw that out there because Myers is missing, and he looks at it and goes, "Okay, well, Let's have some fun.
The only thing he can now, he's forced me to hope for Brannström, Desharnais in the lineup tomorrow. No, thank you.
The other thing that is backfiring on this coach is you play Quinn Hughes 29 minutes and 50 seconds. You play Elias Pettersson 23 minutes and 15 seconds, and you're not winning.
Not sustainable.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the Filipovic tweet. I saw Grant's tweet last night. 52 minutes in, they have 2 5-on-5 shots without Hughes on the ice. So, okay. Well, Coach wasn't just talking about our obsession with Elias Pettersson. He was also talking about how this year has brought more mistakes than last year. Let's take a listen.
A little thin. I mean, we're overplaying some guys, but I think the effort's there. There's just pockets of plays where guys not covering the right spot. Like those are the stuff that you gotta stay focused on. You hit the ice, that's your guy. You got to stay in the slot on that goal. They give him a shot, like things like that. A little bit more frequent this year than last year, for whatever reason. So I think if we shorten up, tighten up on those little plays, the focus plays. We got to get some other guys obviously scoring. You can't rely on the same people, but for the most part, we're hanging in there. That's big to get the 6-on-5. It was well set up, and Jake going out of the bar was nice, and Petey, nice pass. That's a positive.
It was the first part of that answer that caught my attention. We're a little thin and we're overplaying some guys. Like, to me, that sounded like a message to on high.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, it's just really Hronek on the D. I mean, you're allowed to have one injury. Mm-hmm. So for him to say thin, you can't bank on your top 6 defensemen being healthy for the whole season. You get one injury.
No, but the quality defenseman you've lost here does exacerbate the problem.
Totally, but it happens. I mean, it could be the other guy.
Yeah.
What if Hronek's in and Hughes is out?
Last year, Carson Soucy missed 2 bouts of time with injury, and they were tickety-boo.
My point is I'm supporting what you're saying in that thin shouldn't be that we've got a defenseman injured, because that's going to happen.
Yep. No, fair enough.
Like thin sounds like
fair enough.
We didn't have that defenseman available to be injured, and now he is, and now we're really screwed.
I agree. Also, the context of a quality defenseman over a guy who you're hoping to just eat minutes and come out even. JPAT tweeted last night that it felt like a preseason game. We have got to talk about this home record. JPAT, it feels like a preseason game in here. Neither team fired up for this one, nor the fans. Awfully quiet start to the night. 4-6-4 at home now. It's the fewest wins in the National Hockey League, tied with Chicago and Utah. It is the 3rd worst home record in the National Hockey League, behind Chicago and Anaheim. They're tied with Detroit. They are 30th in the league in goals against average at home, giving up 3.86. Only Colorado and Pittsburgh are worse. Utterly bizarre. And if you want to say 14-game sample size at home, dreadful home record with a pretty good club because they win games on the road, coaching bears some of that responsibility because you have last change at home. That is also fair, before anyone goes and thinks I'm Rick Tocchet's lawyer.
They seem more active on the road. They seem content to be hemmed in at home. Versus on the road, they seem to be a little bit more proactive on the forecheck and a little bit more willing to press higher. And how many times last night, you're going to get hemmed in. You never play a game where you don't get hemmed in. There's going to be multiple times. It just felt like it was every time the opposition had the puck, they would hem the Canucks in for 90 seconds. Mm-hmm. And if your forecheck is a little bit more rambunctious, you tend to avoid those spells a little bit more. And on the road, it just seems like that happens a bit more.
How about this from Jeff? Adam Foote conducting much of today's practice, stopping drills in the defensive zone and barking instructions, demonstrating where he wants guys positionally. Footer is real mad.
Yeah, and Adam Foote was a fairly well-rounded. He was not an offensive defenseman, but he could make a pass.
Mm-hmm.
But my instinct is thinking here. He's teaching them meat and potatoes defense right now, just where to be.
Yeah.
I don't think he's telling them how to make a slick outlet
we're
pass.
back to it's hard to coach that.
Yeah.
It's hard to coach that. All those great Montreal Canadiens from the 70s, and I suspect this held true through the Pittsburgh and Detroit years as well. Scotty Bowman did not spend a lot of time at practice teaching goal scoring. You had it or you didn't. He couldn't coach hands into you. He couldn't coach a shot into you. He could coach you where to be when you're defending. So a terrible call leads to the 3-1 St. Louis goal. But I like how they channeled their anger after that and quickly made it 3-2 and then got the goalie out goal to salvage a point. Which brings us to the goaltender. And we're 35 minutes into this
Can you believe that?
Oh, much is happening.
There's a lot happening. Thatcher Demko came back last night, everybody.
His return game, he gets a huge ovation from the crowd at Rogers Arena. It was the only time they weren't quiet early on. I'm not going to go through this big head hockey tweet bullet point by bullet point, but if you needed catching up on the saga that is Thatcher Demko, do you remember Tocchet saying he wasn't worried about the injury at all?
Yeah.
Do you remember Thatcher said, oh yeah, he would have been there for game 1, round 3, and then wasn't there until December 10th? Anyways, so it's been an opus here with Thatcher.
Look at that list.
Oh, I know. Just look at everything that has happened here in 7, nearly 8 months.
I mean, even if you had told us on October 1st, do you think he'll be back by December the 1st? I think it would have been 98% yes. It was December 10th. Still another week and a half past that.
And the other thing is Thatcher's been pretty honest with us. The few occasions that he has spoken, he's given you the real. And he was back at that again last night, admitting, knee was on his mind. Take a listen.
Obviously, I mean, I was out for a long time. You know, you have anxiety about things like that, and you know, admittedly, there's a couple times during the game where I'm thinking about it a little bit, just to kind of work through those things, and again, that's just part of the mentality of a game day, and just building that confidence back up.
He would go on to say the knee felt good.
How Jakey played?
Well, I think his own assessment was accurate. Rusty.
For sure. Obviously, it's frustrating losing. I thought I could have played a couple goals differently. So, I mean, I'm sure that there's stuff that I can pull to, keep building. But obviously, it's frustrating right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, he said the day felt like a whirlwind. When asked specifically which goals he wanted back, he said all 4 of them.
And I can hear that, and I think like the Bolduc goal. It's a hell of a shot. I think he stops that when he's A1 condition.
I can abide.
I think the Robert Thomas goal. I think when he's in A1, but then they were also given other grade A opportunities that he did stop. Mm-hmm. So on the whole, I think he actually played pretty damn well, because I would have excused a couple of the saves that he made going in, and I would have expected a couple of the goals that went in for him to save. So it's a wash in that regard. I think he played pretty well.
Yeah.
Again, 9 high danger opportunities.
How many did he stop of the 9?
Well, I think they probably maybe the Bolduc wasn't
all of them.
Maybe the Bolduc wasn't a high danger, but the other 3 would have been.
Certainly. How's your popliteus holding up?
Honestly, it's strained right now, I think. Mm-hmm. But there were so many acrobatic saves that he was asked to make. I was worried about it. Like that was the last kind of game you'd want to give Thatcher Demko.
Yeah, and we talked about it yesterday, but what is a little, I got to say, disturbing for me, Dakota Joshua comes back from cancer. And they were horseshit that night against the Islanders. Like, nothing.
Right.
Passion, emotion, nope, bereft. Your stud goaltender comes back after 7 months away.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it wasn't a spirited effort. We were talking about that yesterday. Like, with John Shannon, Cam Robinson. You almost expect you're going to get a spirited effort. I would have to think that Jim Montgomery was in the Blues room going, guys, we better be on our game early because these guys are going to come out flying with the goaltender back for the first time.
And I would have guessed that he would also say, be patient. They're probably not going to give us much here. They're probably going to be really responsive.
Yeah. No.
4 breakaways.
Speaking of Joshua, he did get his first goal of the season in game number 13. Connor Garland dutifully collected the puck. I suspect that one's going in a special place at the Joshua home.
How about the setup of that, though, too? Garland scooting past. Now, the player wasn't going to engage him because of the too many men risk, but just everything that Garland does is unique. And
yep, that was a heads up little play.
Yeah.
By the little guy. And he has 2 assists on the night, Connor Garland. He continues to play pretty well.
Yeah.
What are our friends at Yellow Dog up to?
The Squirrel Chaser Pale Ale on sale for the month of December, and it is an easy drinking beer. It's a great house beer. It's neither too hop forward nor too, molasses forward, if you will.
Yep.
Great one just to have around the house. The Squirrel Chaser on sale at your government and private liquor stores.
Yesterday, got a photo sent to me from a friend who was at Yellow Dog 2 in Penticton, which just opened.
Which we just talked about.
We should just check out. Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. So Nick Kyprios, a couple of things we got to discuss here with Nick Kyprios. He reveals in an article, which includes a trade board, that Boeser is looking for 8 years north of $8 million, that the Canucks are not yet prepared to pay him that. And that expect to hear Boeser's name in trade talks until an extension is done, because, of course, the alternative could be losing him in free agency. He goes to point out that the Canucks are one of the busier trade organizations in the NHL. And, yeah, all that is fair. This is the bridge you have to cross as a management group. Okay, we got a good player. He's not a core player, but he's close. Who was a big part of our success last year. Is probably our best natural goal scorer. Need him. Can we get him re-signed before the deadline? Okay, no. We're going to run that sprint in the offseason between whenever our season ends and July 1st and see if we can get him done there. If Nils Höglander and Dakota Joshua and Danton Heinen were scoring goals, and if DeBrusk was a little more consistent, perhaps you could build an argument, okay, you might be able to move Boeser for a top 4 defenseman. But I would be surprised given the way things are going.
I don't want to.
And Irf follows up and says, pretty quiet around those two sides. Nothing new to report. Brock loves it here. Of course he does. But his camp has zero problem waiting this out. And, yeah, so long as he's healthy, I can completely understand that from the Boeser side of things.
Remember, he's pretty young. You'll get him the first year of this contract. He plays almost the entire season as a 28-year-old. That being said, I don't know that I really want to see what Brock Boeser looks like as a 34-year-old. It's funny how that 7-year difference, it's a big year for me if I'm the Canucks. Not that they're around to see it.
Yep.
But let me ask you this, in a variation of what I asked you. A 7-year, $8 million a year contract, is that a fair deal for both sides?
Yep. I think it's fair.
Given JT Miller's contract is relatively new still. I don't know how Brock Boeser can look at that.
I hate term for players who, like you say, he has never been fleet of foot.
Yeah.
He gets by with good hockey IQ, positional play. We've seen when he's battled injuries where he hasn't been that dangerous. I'm not sure that's a deal I would sign, Blake. But in the context of this market and a cap going up, I think that's quote-unquote fair for both sides. Let me just throw this at you because it ties in. Kibros has Thomas Chabot on his trade board. Now, that's a very sensitive trade for the Ottawa Senators because if they're moving Chabot, they are admitting that their core needs to be shaken up. But given the way they've played this year and some of the rumblings we've heard there, Chabot's $8 million per year for 3 years after this one with a modified no trade. I don't think you get him for Boeser alone. But Boeser plus, is that something you would consider? It's a little bit robbing from Peter to pay Paul in the context of the current club.
But again, you've got Jonathan Lecker-Mackey coming. Who
that would be the play.
Yeah.
That we feel like we have a Boeser replacement in-house, that we're addressing our biggest need. He's more a left side than a right side guy, Chabot, but needless to say, he would be anchoring a second pair. And, if you feel you still need a winger, you go out and get another winger, rental winger, who helps you in the immediate term on the Boeser replacing Boeser's offense.
he's a nice player. I've always liked Chabot.
Yep. He used to play enormous minutes there. I haven't checked in on him recently.
He's not a flimsy player either.
No, he is not.
So
he is their style defenseman. Like, that's the thing, is Alvin could pitch it to them like, okay, guys, we're getting a guy who's a much better puck mover, but
not small.
is not giving up.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's playing $22.50 per night now, Chabot. So he plays less than Sanderson there, but he still plays healthy
Maybe
minutes.
you give them a puck moving defenseman in return, like a Brannström.
Okay. On that note, let's get to today's menu, brought to you by Greta. I told you we had much to discuss. We've gone long here. I'm sorry, Mike. Greta, great spot for all the games, home and away. Steps from the stadium, minutes from the arena. We'll be there for some Canucks Army viewing parties. In fact, there's a Canucks Army Christmas party tonight. You're not invited. We are. Are you going?
I'm
No.
going.
You are going?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The Smash Burger at Greta, fantastic. Check out the arcade. Weekly drink specials. Let the games begin. 50 West Cordova at Greta Bar. Frank Corrado's going to join us, and you mentioned we have the right two guests to discuss some of these issues today. Frank Corrado is exceptional at explaining the X's and O's of hockey, and we get deep into this on Tocchet's system. Laurance Gilman's going to join us as well after we missed them the last couple of weeks. Talk about Demko, the goaltending situation, Boeser. And we ask him, can you win a cup playing this sort of system that Tocchet does? Time now for our Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. Dakota Joshua was my runner-up yesterday for a prop on a goal. I went Connor Garland, so it's a loss.
I'm blanking. I'm blanking.
You blank every day.
I don't. When I was winning,
When you win, you remember.
I don't remember.
It's funny how that works. It was a Canucks prop. I know that much. Saves?
Yeah, it was. 30 saves, which he didn't get.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big Thursday nighter, as we've discussed. Seahawks in the strange spot of rooting for the San Francisco 49ers at home against the Rams. I've been big on LA all year. Now that they're healthier, and one could argue much healthier than San Francisco, I think they'll win the ball game. I don't need the points. I'm going to take the Rams on the money line at plus 135.
And I think we will be cheering in the same direction then, because I think to get there, Matthew Stafford will certainly be throwing for over 275. And that's plus 210. It's pretty decent. I like the number.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Frank Corrado coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
Frank Corrado was shining bright across the TSN empire yesterday. A very busy day for the former Vancouver Canuck and TSN hockey analyst. Lots of duties, including the late Sports Center where they talked about the Canucks and Blues. How are you?
I'm good. I thought that would come up today. A little anecdote from Matt, like, look at that, Canucks. Mm-hmm. Everyone stayed up past 1 a.m. to get the Canucks talk in. Yeah,
absolutely.
Although it didn't go super late. I would have liked if they had a better, more diligent performance in front of their goaltender who was playing his first game in 8 months, is it? Like, I don't know. Like, that guy has won this team so many games. He's bailed out guys so many times, and he's coming back in a situation where you could tell he looked a little rusty. I think he said it after the game that he felt rusty. It didn't look like it was overly confident or comfortable for him. Now, I'll give him a lot of credit because it felt like he settled in and he made some saves down the stretch that were noticeable and helped the team get a point. But I just think that would have been one of those games where, like, let's try and make it as easy as possible on this guy. And the conditions would have been pretty good for that. St. Louis are not world beaters. They're a good team. But yeah, it felt like there was a little more to be desired from, the diligence as far as how they played away from the puck last night.
I thought Rick Tocchet afterwards was going to use that because, we've seen this with coaches. When they're at rock bottom, they don't talk like they're at rock bottom. They wait for a safe spot to rip a team. The team came back, tied the game, got a point out of it. I thought this was maybe a safe spot, especially with the performance of the group in front of Demko. I thought this was a safe spot to rip the team.
Yeah.
Instead, he has this emotional bite back at Farhan inexplicably. And when asked about the odd man rushes and the breakaways, really downplayed it. And acknowledged it, but didn't really dwell on it or say that he thought this was emblematic of a bigger problem or anything. What did you make of that? I thought he belittled the problems that they had last night, which were pretty big.
I guess the one that comes to mind, the first one, or not the first one, but the one is the Thomas goal. And that's not a systems thing. That's just Garland not playing that correctly. So in that case, I would say that, hey, like, I don't know what the coach is going to do or say about that. But it's always interesting. Like, he's so brutally honest sometimes, even when his team wins games. Like, how many times have we come on here and talked about, like, hey, Canucks win a game, but man, Rick Tocchet did not seem overly happy about that one. It's like he really pushes that one. And then, yeah, on a night like last night, almost goes the other way and gets defensive about things. I don't know. Like, I don't know, like, what the long plan would be around that. Is that maybe a way of just kind of, not lighting more fires for the group? That's the first thing that I would think, like, just kind of, throw some cold water over some things. Because if he does, like, in a game where you lose, everyone's going to be analyzing it anyways. Like, and then things are going to get micro-analyzed. And then if he throws more, more gasoline on that fire, like that kind of multiplies things. I think that's just his way of kind of, trying to keep the flies off after a game where everyone could see, they didn't have a lot going off the rush. They never do. They weren't clean through the neutral zone. They, when Quinn Hughes was not on the ice, there was issues breaking the puck out, and you give up, the odd man rushes and the breakaway chances in front of your goalie that hasn't played in a long time. Like, it didn't take much to see that there were plenty of issues on the ice in a game like that. And I don't think he's a stupid guy. He would know that as well, but he's trying to just kind of pour some cold water on things.
And maybe worried about that home record, too. He seems to be worried about the mental state of this group when it comes to the home record. And Jake DeBrusk, afterwards, on the television side of things, was asked about it, and he said, hey, if we want the storyline to stop, we just got to go out there and win. And like, these are big boys here, Frank. They can handle it. You know, like, go out and win a damn game, and then the home record will stop being a thing.
Now, the Vancouver home record not being good is puzzling to me, because every team is outside of like the LA teams and the Alberta teams. Everyone's making a swing. You know what I mean? Like, you're hitting Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, or maybe you're going to do a couple California games and you're going to hit Vancouver. And for some reason, I think, probably because Vancouver is such a nice city, the way the schedule makers line things up, Vancouver always seems to have like that road day off for the other team. Now, I'm not privy to St. Louis's schedule coming into this game, but there's enough situations during a season where you should have like a team that's been on a swing, that has maybe a sleepy day off, and you should be able to pounce on them. And that should at times lead to more victories victories at home for Vancouver. But like, I don't know, if like the fans from what I've heard, I haven't been to a game yet this year, but from what I've seen on TV, the fans have been good. Like, there's good buzz in the building. I don't know. Like, it's just, it is puzzling to me for sure.
Yeah. Columbus last week were in Edmonton the night before and showed up and got beat here. St. Louis did have the day off, and I'm sure there's not a single complaint amongst NHL players if you get the day off in Vancouver as opposed to Calgary.
You're looking for that one.
Or Edmonton. Yeah, absolutely.
You look for that one. Yeah.
Is it now evident to you that, imperfect as he may be, Erik Brannström absolutely has to play every night for the Vancouver Canucks because they're too short on puck transporters without him in the lineup?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. But good luck convincing that to the, if you want to call it, management group or coaching staff that in the summer went and got big bodies on the back end. And Erik Brannström is not that. So how much traction can he truly get, even though it's very evident that they need him in the lineup? Like, the fact that they went 2 right-handed shots last night playing together and one playing the left side, it's a thing you don't see very often. And Brannström, like, they need that, not that type of guy, but they need that puck moving ability, or else the puck just doesn't get out of the zone unless Hughes is on the ice. So that was puzzling to me. And that kind of said to me that, as much as they think, or as much as they do need a guy like that and what he does, he still is climbing a little bit of an uphill battle because he doesn't necessarily fit the mold of what they want their blue line to look like. But if you looked back at last night, I think you could probably pick through a number of times where you say, okay, if that's Brannström on his strong side, there's a very good chance that's a pass that gets made, or we're getting out of the zone and it doesn't get bungled up. Like, it's more than a handful for sure. And that just, I think that signifies the importance of Quinn Hughes for this group. And it also signifies how important it is to have someone who can move the puck. The thing is, though, like, you have enough big bodies on the back end, right? Like, it's okay to have an Erik Brannström when you have all these guys that are large and in the way. Like, you just can't have 4 of those guys, which they don't. So that's why I was confused as to why you wouldn't have him in the lineup. He's not a perfect player. Right, you're right, but he helps. So
here's the thing. Patrick Allvin has been pretty good about admitting mistakes. Got off Mikheyev, got off Kuzmenko, and it became clear he was. So Patrick Allvin has already crossed this bridge. I think what you're seeing is the last vestiges of a head coach who might have been kicking and screaming about a small defenseman. But here's the thing. I think Allvin just has to play the heavy with Tocchet and go, Rick, I know you like the big defense. I know Adam prefers the big defenseman. I know we had some success with that in the postseason last year, particularly in the Edmonton series, because they just gobbled up so much space against McDavid and Draisaitl. But we have to play at least one, if not 2, more mobile, agile, puck-transporting defensemen, and we're going to go out on the trade market and get you those guys.
Sure.
Because here's the other thing. Like, even Brannström, Alvin and them, they demoted him upon acquisition, right? Like, he did not factor into their plans. So I think Patrick has to be the first one to take the step and say, look, we may have demoted this guy. We may have considered him a throw-in for cap purposes, but he's become a useful player, and maybe we didn't necessarily have designs he would be this useful.
When you started this question about admitting mistakes, I thought you were going to bring up the fact that Vinny Desharnais cannot play another game.
Well, there's that too.
It's crazy, though. It's crazy how Desharnais looks so different on Edmonton, where he's not cast overly different on Edmonton. Like, he was a third pair guy that sometimes pinch hit in the top four if Cody Ceci was having a rough night. Like, that's what he was. Maybe there was a couple nights where he played on the top pair, but those would have been few and far between. But he looked more comfortable. And
I thought he was terrible. You can ask Matt during the playoffs last year. I thought, oh my God, that is a terrible defenseman. And when the Canucks signed him, my mouth was on the floor. And my mouth was on the floor. My jaw was on the floor. Like, what? You saw this guy firsthand, and you went and got him?
You gave him 2 years too.
Like,
well, okay. So here's the thing now about, if you want to get into where the Canucks are struggling offensively, they're still dead last in the NHL at producing rush chances. And that has not improved at all. It was an issue going into the year, an issue at the start of the year, and has not improved. Like, pick the worst team in the league that you can think of. Nashville, Chicago, whoever. Vancouver is worse at them off the rush. That is, like, that should be so far from the truth for this team based on the caliber of forwards that they have and their ability to skate the puck. That tells me something. Like, they're not getting the puck, and they're not getting it with clean availability through the neutral zone. The other thing that should really be the focus here is we've talked about the shot attempts and the quality chances, right? And hey, as long as your quality chances are still up there, we're at the point now where shot attempts and shots on net, respectively, are 24th and 25th in the NHL, and now slot shots are all the way down to 25th. So, you can talk about, the conversation of quality versus quantity. They're getting neither right now. And a lot of that has to do with, can you get the puck to the forwards cleanly? And if Quinn Hughes is on the ice, yes, you can. If he's not on the ice, no, you can't. And that is, that should be an issue. Great that you generate chances off the forecheck, because you dump the puck in a lot, and you probably talk about that every game. Let's have a heavy forecheck, and but you need to have more than one tool at your disposal offensively. And right now, they're kind of a little bit of a one-trick pony.
So let me ask you: is Tocchet's system, while high floor, too low a ceiling, too limiting? Can you win at the highest levels playing this way?
I do believe you can win at the highest levels playing this way, because when it comes playoff time, rush chances are not typically plentiful. Like, they're just not. If you're a team that lives and dies by the rush come playoff time, you're going to have a hard time, because teams are tracking so hard back into their own zone, trying to clog things up. Now, if you can marry, the odd quick strike, quick transition rush chance into a goal with your good forecheck and kind of heavy play in the offensive zone, now you're talking. Now you kind of sound maybe a little bit like the Florida Panthers last year. If you'd have to have a lot of other things going your way to be that, but that's the formula for it. But you still need to have the ability to do it sometimes. And I'm not quite sure that we're at the point where, I don't know if we're at sometimes yet with this group when you're last in the NHL. It's not quite enough to say that, if you're getting 4 rush chances in a game on average, I mean, you're kind of just hoping one of those is an odd man rush at that point, because you're not going to be able to find a second wave or put a pass off a pad and crash down for a rebound. It becomes harder to do that when you're not throwing that much volume off the rush. I think it's great. Give them a lot of credit for being a good forecheck team. No one will ever take that away from them. Ultimately, when it comes to winning hockey, that's going to be part of wearing other teams down. And that's why, I still would say the Canucks have a good chance of having success come playoff time, because they have that element to their game. But 32nd in the NHL, that, it should not be that low.
Natural stat trick has them as 29th in high danger chances for. Admittedly, they do have them as third best in high danger chances allowed. Are you okay with that trade-off? I mean, it's not great for fans, that's for sure. It's low event, and you're putting a lot on goaltending, but are you okay just banking on the goaltending and team defense every single night? Do you think they can win 2-1 games the rest of the year and into the playoffs?
It's hard. Like I watched Winnipeg a lot last year, and they struggled to score, and they had to win game. Like they won so many games in a row without scoring more than 3 goals, and eventually it caught up to them, and they didn't have it. The power play was average, not even average, below average. It was 22nd in the NHL. They had to win those kinds of games, and when push came to shove, and the other team figured you out, you had nothing. Like you didn't have that pushback. Now I would say with Vancouver. Hopefully Demko gets to a place where he feels healthy. But if you're going to try and put that on Lankinen, we saw it with Winnipeg last year. Hellebuck couldn't even cover up for that. So, Lankinen's a good goalie, but he's not Hellebuck. So you're asking a lot out of that goaltender. You're also asking a lot of a group defensively that, at times when they get hemmed in, they struggle to break it out. So no, I don't. That's not a good recipe for this team. The best teams, and it's stating the obvious, are well-rounded. What's the best compliment that you could give to any group? They win in so many different ways. Right now, if you watch the New York Rangers, you're going to say they lose in so many different ways. It's the polar opposite for them. I just don't think the Canucks are in win in so many different ways mode yet. I think they're resilient. The road trip showed that, but it's not quite there yet.
And I think you're absolutely right. And while I listen to the two of you talk about this and agree with pretty much everything you have to say, and Frank is further right in that, we've talked about this for the entirety of this show, Blake, 13 years. The essence of coaching is being able to adapt and find different ways to win different games based on different opponents, their strengths, weaknesses, and how they match up against yours. Fellas, he doesn't have the personnel to win any other way. He's got 1 defenseman, 2, if you count Brannström, who can move the fucking puck. So, what? No. But if you're Rick Tocchet, let's all put ourselves in Rick Tocchet's shoes. How am I going to win this game? Well, let's keep the chances down and hope we can convert on however few chances we do get. To me, this is on Allvin and Rutherford, and I do think Rick had a pretty big hand in Desharnais and Forbert coming in here. This is on Allvin and Rutherford to come down to the coach's office and say, Rick, here's the thing. We are only going to get so far playing this way with this group of people. Our bad. We should have gotten you another top 4 defenseman who can move the puck on a more consistent basis. We're absolutely going to deliver that by the trade deadline. In fact, we may get 2 if we're lucky. But then what we need from you is a commitment that we're going to play a little bit different, and we're going to generate more off the rush. And
that's the thing.
And writ large.
He has to allow those players to play in the different way.
Well, that's it.
So Frank, I'll ask you, I don't have off the top of my head a ton of Soucy and Myers giveaways by making, and Ray on the last
they've been better recently.
That's
the other thing.
But Ray was talking about stop passing up the boards last night. Why is every single pass up the boards? Why can't you pass through the middle? Because I don't think we've been railing against Soucy and Myers giveaways too much here lately. Has he just forbade it, and as a result, we get the hockey that we see? Myers used to be able to move the puck pretty well. Soucy got some acclaim because he's a big guy with big reach, but hey, he could move the puck periodically.
Smooth. Yeah. He's smooth with the puck.
Are they just forbidden from doing it, do you think?
If they are, that seems quite elementary. This is the best league in the world. Theoretically, I don't know how many defensemen would play in the league. What is it, 200 or something like this? Mm-hmm. It's the best defenseman of the best. And if you have a clean look to make it up the middle of the ice, you should have the autonomy to. Right. Can you have the discipline to see that the first option, is not going to be there. Now I'm going to go up the wall. And I know that's a buzz phrase with defensemen that I heard a lot over the course of my career. And this always came down when either you were struggling or as a decor, things were maybe moving a little too fast for you. I always heard, first option hockey. Whatever the first option you see, you take it. And chances are the first option, if that's what's being said, which we don't know, I'm just telling you from my experience, if that's what's being said, it's like, oh, first option's up the boards. There we go. I'm going to take it, right? And you're just kind of, you're chipping away and building from there. That's the only thing that I can think of, because for a coach to explicitly say we are not going up the middle of the ice, the only thing in my recollection that I have of that is playing for Dinamo Riga, where our annual payroll was like $6, and we had to play against a Vanguard Omsk, who had a $20 million budget from Gazprom. And our coach told us before the game, not even to just not pass it up the middle of the ice. We're not passing. We're not even passing the puck. It is a flip or off the glass, or you can ice it 14 times, but we are not making any passes tonight.
No giveaways.
Yeah. So that way, we will not get caught with a giveaway, and that's how we're going to try and win the game. I highly doubt that's happening at the NHL level with a good coach like Rick Tocchet. But, yeah, I do think it probably would be more of the, hey, we've had issues moving the puck this year. Let's just take the first option every single time. Let's not look for option number 2.
Yeah, gotta love oligarch hockey.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me finish by asking you the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question then, Frank. Is Rick Tocchet's system holding this team back?
No, it is not holding this team back. I think, like you said, he is trying to play with the roster he has, play with the cards he's been dealt. And let's be honest, let's keep things in perspective here, okay? The Canucks sit in a playoff spot. They haven't had Demko. They haven't had Miller. They've had stretches where they haven't had Boeser, and their $11 million player, at times has not played like that, although he's playing better recently. So with all that being said, you've had to lean on the Tocchet system to get you to this point, and the players have had to execute it. So that's the kind of bigger picture overall perspective that you do have to keep in mind as we nitpick certain things. They're still in a good spot, and they haven't had the star power outside of Quinn Hughes, and you've had to lean on it, and look where you are. So it's not all bad. We can, hyper-analyze it, which we always do, and it can get better. And I think that's the optimistic view for Canucks fans. You make a couple tweaks, you bring in someone who can move the puck, your goalie's healthy, and all of a sudden you got something here.
Yes, 100% right, Frank Corrado. And it can not only get better, it could be a whole lot worse. And we saw that with this franchise prior to Rick Tocchet's arrival. He pulled this son of a gun out of the abyss. I mean, They were lost. And he has at least developed a system and a team that on a night-to-night basis is competitive, and last year was much more than that. Yeah, it's imperfect.
It ain't scintillating.
No, and it's not, Blake. It's not. And I think we're just going to have to stomach it here until the personnel changes on the blue line. Awesome session here, Frank. Appreciate all your insight. We will catch up next week.
Thanks, boys. And remember, no passes.
No passes.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. Our next guest is a former assistant general manager of the Vancouver Canucks and NHL executive with the Leafs and Coyotes as well. Welcome back, Laurance Gilman. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me back.
Mm-hmm. We missed you the last couple of weeks.
Yes, I
you were visiting family in Boston.
I went back to the scene of the crime.
Right. And we just sort of had a conversation before we hit record about, can you experience Boston the same way today?
As a tourist.
That you would have prior to 2011.
Is it all stained for you?
It's forever changed for me. And no, I can't. I mean, listen, it's a beautiful city and it's got wonderful neighborhoods and restaurants. But no, it sticks in the pit of my stomach every time I'm there because I think about what we had and what we essentially pissed away. And, I don't know if I'll ever have an opportunity to win a Stanley Cup. And all we had to do was go to Boston and win one game, and we failed to do that. And I've said it when we were doing our radio gig, I said I'll never get over it. Even if I win another Stanley Cup, I'll never get over losing it from Vancouver.
You can sympathize with players and there's histories littered with players that went on magical runs in their rookie seasons, say, and then never returned again. I mean, I'm sure you've got that swirling in your head a little bit too, right?
For sure. And there's great players Hall of Fame players who never won a Stanley Cup. Mm-hmm. And, then there's pluggers who've won 5, what I mean? Like, it's like the hockey gods are fickle. Yeah. But, it is what it is. As I said, my experience, my tenure in Vancouver was by far the most enjoyable of my career. And we had the best team in hockey 2 years in a row. But I learned it's not the best team in hockey that wins it. It's the team that's playing the best at that time. And there are a lot of variables that go into that, including injuries, and officiating, and goaltending, and just sometimes plain old puck luck.
I'm sorry to begin with that.
It's okay. It's not like I don't think about it nearly every day.
What did you make of the Canucks and Blues last night?
I didn't think the Canucks played their best game. I thought they were sloppy from the outset. I didn't think their pace of play was very good. I thought their defense in their own zone in particular was uneven at best, and says to me that they've got to be looking at addressing their defensive core, bolstering it. And the bright spot clearly was Thatcher Demko. And I think if he doesn't play to the level that he played last night, they don't get a point out of that game. So, you're not going to have your best game every night in an 82-game season. But I think in this one, the Canucks were fortunate to walk away with at least 1 point.
Hey, you were at the draft table when Demko was selected, and I know there was debate, and there always is, but the consensus around the table, was it because I remember Blake and I were sitting there going, that goaltender that people thought were going to go in the first round is still there. Was it one of those situations of, wow, he's still there? Like, did you have scouts and guys at the table think that he wouldn't be there when you were selecting in the second round that year?
Well, I can tell you, my recollection was there was a player Jim Benning wanted dearly. And Jim really liked Thatcher Demko a lot. But there was a player that Jim liked very, very much. And that player got selected between the start of the first round and our pick. And Jim's response was, oh, well, boys, I guess we're just going to have to take our future number 1 goaltender. And he was not disappointed to do so.
Wow. Fantastic. Wow. So it was universal at the table. Like, people were.
Yeah, there was no question. And I would venture to guess that there were guys around that table that were hoping this guy that Jim liked would be taken so that we would get Thatcher Demko.
So for the current group, and we can even include the coaches into this, they see this guy that has worked so hard to get back. You've put him in bubble wrap for the entire fall. You unwrap him. You put them out there, and they play like that in front of them. Like, I've got no skin in the game, and I was angry watching that game last night. Would you be able to? I only saw one cutaway to Jim and Patrick upstairs, and it was typical stoic look, staring down at the ice. But I would have been pacing. Like, that's no way to treat your guy.
Well, that's something for the coaching staff to deal with, and I'm fairly certain that Rick Tocchet had a meeting with his team either after the game last night or potentially today before practice about showing up, and particularly showing up on an important occasion where a guy's coming in, where your number 1 goalie's coming in to play when he hasn't played in 8 months or whatever the case is. So, but as I said, you're not going to get a Stanley Cup effort every single night of the year. There are going to be nights where your team lays an egg, and it was bad timing to do so in Thatcher Demko's debut. But then again, they were lucky to have Thatcher Demko because they were able to get at least a point here.
They are lucky. They are lucky to have him on a large scale as well here. But only 1 year left on his deal. Kevin Lankinen has come in. He's been marvelous. He's not going to re-sign for that contract again, obviously. What What should management be thinking about this goaltending situation just on the macro right now? Because Thatcher Demko has had some injury issues here. We know when healthy, he's amongst the best on the planet. But is there a calculus to be made right now, or do you kick that can down the road for a year from now? Like
he's eligible for the extension in July, right?
That's right.
Going into the final year of his deal.
But do you need to see a healthy training camp in fall before you even commit to that? What do you think they're thinking?
Well, I don't know what they're thinking, but I'll tell you what I'd be thinking.
Yeah.
I would be thinking, I'm not doing anything this season. I want to watch this guy play out and see how he performs. More importantly, how can he stay healthy? Mm-hmm. And if he finishes the year and stays healthy, doesn't get injured again, and plays to his Vezina, candidate level, bet your bottom dollar I'd be talking extension with him in the fall or in the summer. But I wouldn't do anything right now. I would let it play out.
Moving along here, we heard today from Nick Kyprios that Brock Boeser is looking at a $8 by $8 million extension. The Canucks have played this with Boeser. We talked about that earlier in the fall. What's your sense of where? I mean, he got hurt, but the numbers are still pretty good there with Boeser. He's not going to hit 40 goals, but maybe a 40-goal pace, 35 even, maybe a 70-point pace. How would you handle the Boeser situation here?
To begin with, he's got 7 goals in 20 games. So extrapolating that to an 82-game season, if he were to play it, which he's not, that takes him to less than 30 goals. As I said when we spoke about him a few weeks ago, I view Brock Boeser as a guy who scored 40 goals. I don't view him as a 40-goal scorer. And based on what I see happening to this point, reinforces that. Again, we're talking about another player that has had injury issues, some due to no fault of his own, but he's only played 81 games once in his career, I think, if I'm not mistaken. That's another one where I would slow play it. I mean, he's asking for the JT Miller contract. He's not the catalyst that JT Miller is. I mean, he's not someone who, in my estimation, drives play or necessarily makes other players better. He is, give credit where credit is due. He's got a great release. He's got an excellent shot. His skating has improved. He's a big, strong guy, and he does compete. I'm not certain that that's 8 times 8 worthy in this instance. Like Demko, I would wait it out and see what happens here.
Wait it until when? I mean, you're not getting past the trade deadline, are you? You're just saying wait the next 6 weeks sort of thing?
I don't know, Blake, to be honest with you. I'm not, I like Brock Boeser. Mm-hmm. I'm not in love with Brock Boeser as a player. I recognize his value and his contribution. I don't know what he's going to get in the market because others know that he's injury prone and he doesn't drive play in those things. And teams are, yes, there's going to be more salary cap space, but teams are getting a little smarter in the way they operate. I'm not sure what I would do. I would certainly take stock between now and the trade deadline and maybe have a discussion with him and his agent and take their temperature on what it is they're willing to settle for, and whether the club is willing to go to $8 million and whether it's 8 years.
They clearly wanted to know one way or another with Pettersson before last year's trade deadline. Basically, got him to the bargaining table when Elias himself didn't want to get there. But Boeser's a different matter for you. Like Elias was so far up the food chain and going to cost so much money that it was prudent to want to know what he's going to cost us going forward to be able to do your trade deadline business. Is Boeser a separate category, or is Boeser akin to that?
I think he's a cut below that category, personally. I think your core players, when I look at the Canucks, are Pettersson, JT Miller, obviously Quinn Hughes, and if he proves healthy, Thatcher Demko is as well. Again, I think Brock Boeser is an excellent player. He brings a lot to the team. I'm just not sold that I would sell the farm to keep him. And the term, quite honestly, the term makes me a little nervous because of this player's history, to get his injury history.
Mm-hmm.
Want to ask you, because this has cropped up, and it was kind of an undercurrent, but it got quite it got a lot of momentum as Canucks fans were watching last night's game. Tocchet's system. So first of all, full credit to Rick Tocchet for establishing a defensive system with these Vancouver Canucks, which had been a problem for the two previous coaches. It has underpinned their success. They play great team defense and typically get goaltending, and they're in a lot of games, and they win a lot of games because of that. They don't amount much on the rush by way of chance.
Chances, period.
They dump and chase a whole lot. They hang on to pucks and don't generate a lot of shots or a lot of scoring chances, let alone grade A chances. Can you win a cup with that system, Laurence?
I don't see why you can't. I mean, if as we've talked about before, my favorite analytic metric is possession, and championship teams do hold on to the puck longer than other teams. There is a base threshold that we've actually seen. You probably, offense sells tickets and defense wins championships if you're playing a structured game. St. Louis was a great example when they beat Boston in where it was 2018, 2019. System, strong, back and forth, up and down the ice, consistent way of playing. And generally teams that play run and shoot hockey don't win championships. It's just not, it's a game of structure, and it's a game of defense. Defense, strong teams are built down the middle, right? Centers and defensemen and goaltenders. That's the hallmark of a good team.
Mm-hmm. Typically, though, Stanley Cup champions score a lot of goals, have firepower. You mentioned St. Louis. I would argue St. Louis is one of the outliers in terms of a Stanley Cup team. Do you see enough goals here, Laurence, with this group?
Yeah, well, JT Miller's been out of the lineup. I mean, that's a pretty big catalyst to not have over the last 6 games or whatever. Yet they still had a very successful road trip. Elias Pettersson has, didn't have a great start, although I thought he played great, actually. That play he made to DeBrusk to set up the tying goal was a superior player's move, and, had a goal as well in the game. I think, the injuries that the Canucks have had have challenged their ability to produce offensively. DeBrusk having a tough start was also part of it. I think that as they're constructed, I do believe they have the attributes up front to be a Stanley Cup contending team. I don't feel that when I look at their blue line. That's just my opinion. But I don't see any reason that they couldn't win a Stanley Cup playing the way they do up front from an offensive perspective.
Yeah, and get a puck mover or two back on the blue line, and you're probably going to get more goals as well.
They're a difficult team to pin down. Honestly, at this stage of the game, you're 30 games into the season here almost. I don't know that they have a personality. It's a weird one right now. They sometimes get outshot badly. Sometimes, like last night, they suppress shots, but the chances they do give up were golden. So I just don't know what this team is here right now, Laurence.
Well, as I said, last night was not, a good effort for the team. They were loose. They didn't have a lot of structure. What I like about them, and I said this before, we've got a lot of, utility type players, Swiss Army knives, as we like to refer to them, that can be moved around the lineup and give them a different look from game to game. I really think getting JT Miller back is going to make a significant difference in, taking the pressure off of other players to produce. And, they're a good team. They're a very good team. Like I said, they're a player or two away from being a much, much better team, but they're a good club.
Yeah. Board of Governors meetings this week in Florida, and next month, as a matter of fact, I think you're going to start hearing more and more about CBA negotiations. Gary Bettman has already said in the new year they're going to touch base, the two sides. We haven't asked you yet about the tax-free jurisdictions, Laurence. The Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Nevada, Washington. where we have not only seen a multitude of Stanley Cup winners recently, but also a multitude of free agent winners, if you want to call them that. I know it's not working out with Marchessault, Stamkos, Shea. You may say the same thing about Stevenson and Montour in Seattle, but tax-free jurisdictions have won a lot of cups, and tax-free jurisdictions seem to be doing pretty well on July 1st. What's your sense? Does this need to be addressed? Do you think it will be addressed? Is there an equalization formula here to make things a little more balanced between jurisdictions that do tax player salary, income tax, and these outlying states that don't?
Well, let's get something straight off the hop. There was a time when nobody wanted to play for the Florida Panthers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Nashville Predators, particularly early on, despite the fact that they had favorable tax situations and they were good tax jurisdictions. My underlying belief is that hockey players want to win, and a lot of teams, players are going to play for Florida and Tampa because they're good teams, and you've got three Stanley Cups from the state of Florida in the last number of years, and Dallas is also a very competitive team. Nashville's a great place to play. I've always believed if a player's coming to you because of the money, he's not the type of player you're going to win with. Like, you want guys who want to be there for the right reasons, and that can happen. I mean, Edmonton is now a destination place to play because they have Connor McDavid and they have Leon Draisaitl. Vancouver's a great place to play. Where the real advantage comes to those teams is when it's re-signing their own players. And when you're sitting down with a Sam Reinhart, you can say, and I'm sure they did this, looked at three players who signed, three marquee players who signed big deals in the last year. Elias Pettersson in Vancouver, William Nylander in Toronto, and David Pastrnak in Boston. All over 11. 11.5 for Nylander, 11.25 for Pastrnak, and 11.25 for Pettersson. And it's easy. You bring the player in, you bring in his agent with him, and you have your accounting guys there, and you show them the tax calculators of all these jurisdictions, and you say to them, at $11.5 million, and these guys are playing in these regions, they're taking home $5 to $5.5 million. And you're going to have to, and in here, if we pay you 8.6 or whatever it is, you're going to be taking home the exact same amount of money. Like, you're going to have to go earn $11 million in the market to make as much as you're going to take home if you stay and play for our team. That is good, and that just won the cup. That's the real advantage that those teams have. Do I think that there's going to be some kind of adjustment in the CBA? I'd be shocked if the commissioner and the deputy commissioner were to address that. The reality of life is guys want to play for good teams. And if a good team is in like a high jurisdiction, for a high tax jurisdiction market, I don't think players give a damn about that.
Did you ever have a player say no to you in free agency because of BC's tax rates?
No, but we had players say no to us because they didn't want to come and play in Canada. But they didn't specify why.
Okay.
I think, to them, some of them, it's just, why would I play in a foreign country? Or if it's, Minnesota kid would want to play in Minnesota, or, we never had luck with those college free agents for the most part, particularly the American kids that were based in the Midwest, and more importantly, the Boston kids, like the New England guys, they didn't really want to come to us.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I don't believe it was for tax reasons.
Right.
What do you think of this BOG news of negotiating past the 5% and elevating the cap beyond its usual maximum elevation here? Did that scare you for the industry?
No, I mean, the vast majority of the general managers would say they would love it. Bring it on. Mm-hmm. That's the more money they have, the more players they can sign. There's probably a couple smaller market teams that are, the guys running smaller market teams that might be a little, queasy about it. But, the more money that goes into the system, the better it's going to be for everybody. Players are going to get more, teams can be more competitive, the fans will see better hockey. I think it'd be a great thing if it occurs. I hope it does.
Yep, ditto. Awesome stuff, LJ. Made us smarter again this week. Thank you for this. Forgive me again for the opening question. We'll catch up next Wednesday.
It's all good. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
It's Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where if you have your tickets to the big game, why not make it a full experience? Stay downtown at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Harrison Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. You can text this show, 778-402-9680. Email live at sikarsonprice.com. All of it goes to the Great Clips inbox. We'll be doing a To the People segment on Friday. Great Clips.
It's going to be
Oh,
great.
is it ever? So, the baseball hot stove is really heating up here.
Yeah, it is. Things are happening. Finally.
Interesting trade yesterday from the Toronto Blue Jays with the Cleveland Guardians. They add 3-time Gold Glove winning second baseman Andres Jimenez, along with relief pitcher Nick Sandlin for Spencer Horwitz and a minor leaguer. When I first saw the trade, I disliked it until I saw the Sandlin part, because the bullpen, as we know, needs a lot of work. Now, he's homer and walk prone, but he's a strikeout guy, and that Cleveland bullpen was really deep last year, and we chronicled that because of Abbotsford's Cade Smith and the season that he had, and then later in the year, Alberta's Eric Zabrowski comes into that pen. So they had some depth from there. Here is my problem with it. It could actually make them worse offensively unless Jimenez gets back to his 2022 form. He was an all-star that year. He hit .297, 830 OPS. He was actually the number 6 player when you add defensive metrics by B-WAR. It's WAR, but you add the defensive and it becomes B-WAR. So he was worth 7.4 wins that year, which was 6th of position players in Major League Baseball. Now, Jimenez is so good defensively that if they were to lose Bo Bichette to injury in season, he could probably slide over and play shortstop. He may have to be their shortstop going forward if Bichette's in his last year. He's a free agent. But what I dislike, Horwitz was one of the few Jays hitters who went up to the plate with a plan, drew walks, put the bat on the ball, made himself a difficult out. And what I really dislike from the Blue Jays is the defeatism in terms of trying guys at different positions. Like they just decide he's not going to ever be a good enough second baseman. Just like they decided last year after trying Vladdy at third base again and actually seeing some decent results. Oh, he's not a third base. You know, I was looking at Horwitz this year and going, okay, even if you don't like him at second base, he's insurance for Vladdy, both injury this year and maybe if Vladdy walks. You could try him at DH. And I would not be against playing Vladimir Guerrero at third base from time to time. Also interesting that Cleveland immediately flipped Horwitz to Pittsburgh for some pitchers. Now, there's a school of thought that you sold high on Horwitz and bought low on Jimenez, because I'm not sure Horwitz is ever going to have enough power to be a primary first baseman for a first division playoff style team.
His numbers aren't gaudy, that's for sure.
No. You also got more expensive here, so I hope that doesn't preclude them from making more moves, although that doesn't sound like it's going to be the case. And really, Blake, this front office should be very motivated for right now pieces, even at the cost of future pieces prospects. Because this has got to be their last stand, right? Like you're 10 years into this thing. What did you tell the Rogers people? Oh, yeah, but your 11 will be good. Come on.
Don't worry. I'll have this team winning in 14 years.
Exactly.
Max.
So we really could see a redux of what Alex Anthopoulos did in 2015. You remember that year? They weren't the flushest prospect system, but they traded all of them for the Tulowitzkis and the David Prices and all those guys who helped get them to the postseason. As for the Mariners, what incredible luck. They won the 3rd pick in the Major League Baseball draft next year, coming from the 2nd worst odds. They had a less than 1% chance of picking first overall and only a 6% chance of picking in the top 3, and they landed the 3rd overall pick. So good on them. it costs ownership a little more money to sign the 3rd overall pick than it would have to sign the 13th or 14th.
Think there's any help now, guys, available?
No, well, no. They're almost never in the Major League Baseball draft do you get a guy who's going to help that year, even the year thereafter. But it's possible if one of the two teams in front of them passes. There are supposed to be 2 terrific players in next year's baseball draft. Ethan Holiday, who's the youngest son of Matt Holiday, the former Colorado Rockies slugger. His eldest son, Jackson, was the first overall to Baltimore a couple of years ago. This one's a shortstop, third baseman. And then there's a center fielder at Texas A&M who's a tool shed of a player, hitter, defender, and center field runner. So, maybe one of those guys falls to the M's if they become too expensive for Washington and the Angels, who are picking ahead, although the Angels spend money. The Whitecaps, they have their CONCACAF Champions Cup draw. They will be playing Costa Rican side Deportivo Saprissa and our old friend Kendall Waston, former Caps captain, right?
Who left under some less than ideal circumstances in terms of his relationship with the team. So a little bit of a revenge game there,
and then went on and scored a goal in the World Cup, if you recall, in Qatar.
Yeah. They are the best team in Costa Rica, generally regarded. 40 national titles. Finished second last year in their league. So it'll be a tough out. But, it's a home and away.
First leg is somewhere between February 18th and 20th down in Costa Rica, and then back up here between the 25th and 27th of February at BC Place for leg 2.
And that's the unbelievable part. They're going to play this one at BC Place.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
Wow. Do we know that, or are we just assuming that? Because we have assumed before.
Their own release says BC Place.
Oh, boy.
So we're going to assume that works. Here's the other thing. I wouldn't be surprised Forge FC has to play as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they play.
That's Hamilton?
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they play at BC Place too. Probably a different
Is
day.
late February still too cold in southern Ontario to play?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. Snow, all that, yes.
Yeah, there's not as much snow back there, though.
No, there's not as much as there used to be, but there's just no relying on it, right? So
when did Canada not play some qualifiers and games in southern Ontario in awfully cold?
Well, November is certainly.
Okay. But not February.
Not as much on the other side, no.
All right.
They're too scared of snow.
Well, because that's typically when the MLS season starts too, right?
Panama, that Jamaica game was in March.
What was this? What was the snow pile game?
That was Edmonton.
Oh, was that Edmonton?
Yeah. And that was designed to be what it was.
I thought it was BMO.
No,
Okay, my
yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
The Caps will lose a player later today to San Diego in the expansion draft. Well, I say San Diego. There are trades possible here where you can make a trade with a third-party club and wind up giving San Diego somebody else, but none of that to date.
No, but what they did do is they signed Ralph Priso and JC Ngondo today. So it puts those guys really on the menu then for San Diego, because you're not going to take a player in an expansion draft that isn't signed.
Right.
So it puts them on the menu for San Diego, but both those players require an international spot, which generally an expansion team is going to want to fill those valuable slots themselves.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I suppose you could take a UFA if you think you were going to sign him.
You're desperate for him, sure.
Yeah. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Interesting signing from the BC Lions here because, well, for the last several years, they've had a lot of veteran CFL quarterbacks. They've signed a quarterback named Garrett Schrader. He played at 2 power conference schools at the highest level of the NC2A, Syracuse and Mississippi State. He started for the better part of 3 seasons at Syracuse and was high up their school record book. He was even athletic enough that Mississippi State moved him to wide receiver after his first year there at quarterback. So he's a good scrambler. Remember watching him play a couple of times. And, of course, there will be no Vernon Adams. He is now a member of the Calgary Stampeders. I know they have Chase Bryce there, but who knows? This could be the next BC Lions quarterback of some note. Poll question results from Tuesday. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question asks you, does Thatcher Demko get back to Vezina-level goaltending? There were 2 options for yes, this year, next year. There was also no. Winner of the poll is?
This year.
No, next year.
Oh.
45%. 35% said this year. 20% said no. That struck me as high.
That's actually pretty high when you think about it.
I didn't think it would be that high.
20% think that he'll never be the same.
Right. Well,
1 in 5.
The way this injury has been characterized, and by Thatcher himself, I can understand a little bit of the Chicken Little sentiment seeping in here. Merlin says, not with this defense in front of him. Yeah, understandable. Toro says, getting hurt again is inevitable. Sign Lankinen to a starter's deal.
Oof.
Yeah. Chris, in my opinion, he won't make it to season's end. I mean, whew. Thomas, this is an elite NHL goalie we're talking about. The only caveat here is if he's limited by the injury or not. He didn't suddenly forget how to play goal because he's been off so long. If he's 100%, he'll be back to speed in a month. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. Well, we thought Forbert was playing for Vincent Desharnais last night.
Duped everybody. It wasn't until after practice that there was some intel there from Irf that suggested it was going to be the 4th pair at practice that actually plays up as the 3rd pair. Strange.
So Friedman got in. That's all I have. Anything to self-report?
Nothing I can write. No.
Another perfect show for Blake Price. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. We're live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about.
Wait, I do have an E&O.
Yeah.
Right before you say your final 3 words of the show. Steve in the inbox. E&O from Blake on Tuesday. He used the term road to hoe. I don't recall that.
Okay.
The saying is row to hoe.
Really?
He says, in that vein, Matt and Blake have been using the same saying with different spellings. Matt uses the term toe the line.
Oh, it is road to hoe. I say toe the line.
T-O-E, toe the line.
Yeah.
But I use T-O-W. How would you know how I'm spelling it when I say it? How would you know that? I mean, the closed caption is not me typing.
Toe the line, to conform. Accept the authority, principles,
how do you spell
or policies. Toe? Well, T-O-E.
Yeah.
So you're right on one. I am today years old when I found out it was row to hoe. I always thought it was road.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I probably did too.
Tough road to hoe.
I don't usually use that term, though.
No.
I'll trust him that I said that, but okay.
What's the listener's name here?
This is Steve.
Name? Steve?
Yeah.
Steve, you not only caught him in a cliche, which he's going to go home and beat himself up about.
Probably will, yeah.
But a mistaken cliche at that. Oh, this brings me great joy.
I thought it would.
Keep it local.
Worth stopping the sign-off for.
Hell yes. Keep it local.